The Chinese dynasties.
Zhang.
The beginning of the Shang dynasty is debatable. Historians estimate the start being anywhere from the mid-18th century to the mid-16th century BC. What they do know is that the Bronze Age signaled its arrival. The main feature of this dynasty was the technology. Bronze working became common and was used for many things such as chariots and axes in battle and gifts to bury with the king. More new innovations were complex irrigations and flood control. The people of this dynasty lived off the land, and as time went on, they began settling on farms rather than being nomadic. Also, their writing style was different from the rest of the world. The Chinese had characters to indicate words and ideas, not phonetic letters. These characters were written on animal bones and used to foretell the future. Socially, this dynasty was somewhat modern. They did have distinguished social classes. Furthermore, all classes shared a religion. This dynasty was before the time of Confucianism and Buddhism, so all people were polytheistic. They also worshipped their ancestors and believed that the state of crops and one's well-being was based on their ancestors' happiness. As the dynasty declined, it was weakened by repeated battles with nomads and rivaling tribes within China. It officially ended when the last king, Zhang Zhao, was defeated by the rebel leader in 111 BC.
Zhou. The Zhou dynasty was the longest of all the dynasties, ruling for almost a millennium, from 1046 BC to 256 BC. It included the reign of 37 emperors, starting with Wu Wang. The Zhou dynasty was split into two subperiods, the Western dynasty and the Eastern dynasty. These are divided and distinguished by the time when the capital was in energy in the West, and time it moved and became Louis in the East. In this political turmoil, however, philosophic schools became popular. Thanks to philosophers such as Confucius and Lao Tzu, future China was greatly influenced, and the Mandate of Heaven was introduced. As this dynasty declined, the Qin army took the city of Changzhou and gained control in 256 BC. Though the power of the Zhou had been minimal and scarcely noticed when it left, this dynasty established political and cultural characteristics that identified with China for 2,000 years.
Qin. Though the Qin dynasty only lasted 15 years, from 191 BC to 206 BC, it was extremely influential and an interesting bit in Chinese history. Qin Shi Huangdi took absolute control of all of China. He was a legalist and imposed legalism on China. He was a harsh ruler. He set clear rules, and those that disobeyed suffered great punishments, and all outside information was censored. They burned books that didn't fit this criteria. While Shahindi was a harsh, abusive ruler, he did do the empire a lot of good, including building the Great Wall for protection. He developed an effective system of bureaucracy, undermined the aristocracy, issued standardized weights and measures, equipped the army with iron weapons, and enjoyed a rising agricultural output and a growing population. However, 4 years after Shahindi's death, the dynasty ended 206 BC.
Han. After the Warring States came about at the end of the Qing dynasty, China was united once again under the Han. This dynasty lasted for 400, from 206 BC to 220 CE, and was considered a golden age of arts, politics, and technology. While Confucian lived during the Zhou dynasty, Confucianism wasn't established as the basis for Chinese state until the Han. It was all about relationships with people and hard work. It led to a strict patriarchal society and imperial academics that trained officials for state offices. Furthermore, the major economic achievement of this dynasty was the Silk Roads. These began as Emperor Hu sent missions to Central Asia, thus opening trade routes. The Silk Roads increased trade tremendously and brought the empire economic prosperity. While the Han once thrived, eventually it got too big to be sustained. This, along with rivalry among elite, the Yellow Turban Rebellion, caused this dynasty's downfall in 220 CE.
Sui.
After the collapse of the Han, China was unified under the Sui. From 589 to 618, this unity was solidified by canal systems that linked North and South China. With the empire unified, new technology and economic prosperity ensued. Also during this dynasty, Buddhism became popular. Emperor Wendy, in fact, had monasteries built at the bases of China's 5 sacred mountains. Further, Emperor Yang used Buddhism to justify his ruthless military campaigns to conquer Korea. However, as these military efforts began wasting away resources, many rebellions sprang up at the neglect the people received. The rulers were overtaken, and the dynasty ended in 618.
Tang. The Tang Dynasty, which ruled from 1618 to 1907, was founded by those of nomadic and Chinese ancestry. Like the Han, it was regarded as a golden age of arts and literature. The Tang sought to restore the glory of the Han. Elite women also exercised more social freedom as well, as they could participate in social life. Also contributing to the prosperity of the Tang was the influence of visitors from all over Asia. China received delegations with tribute, merchants with goods, and religious pilgrims. All the immigrants brought with them more culture and created Western barbarianism, where anything Western was popular among the northern elites. The traditional Southerners, however, were critical of the northern neighbors for their Western influence. Furthermore, Indian Ocean Basin participation became popular and brought thousands of ships to southern China annually. All of this new trade and culture brought prosperity to the empire. Eventually, though, rebellion rose and the classes conflicted. This brought an end to the Tang Dynasty in 907.
Song. The Song Dynasty was from 960 to 1279. It was closely linked to the Tang. They kept the same government. There was a reviving Confucianism and explosion of scholarship that led to Neo-Confucianism. To keep up with the population, new technologies and innovations came up and sustained the thriving dynasty. For example, they kept the empire fed with a new, fast-ripening, drought-resistant rice from Vietnam. Industrial productions also soared. The iron industry increased its output immensely. Likewise, technological innovations such as wood blocking, printing, and movable type became known, and the dynasty's navigational and shipbuilding innovations led the world. Lastly, with the reviving Confucianism, the patriarchal society became very strict and harsh, with customs such as foot binding. Light women would wrap their feet and break their bones to emphasize beauty and fragility. This was also another way to distinguish elites from commoners. Unfortunately, after this prosperous time, Song Dynasty was attacked and beaten by its neighbors, the Mongols. Song wasn't strong enough to fight off the powerful Mongols, and the dynasty fell in 1279.
Yuan. The Yuan dynasty was not ruled by the Chinese. China was instead a part of the Mongols' great empire from 1279 to 1368. With such a vast empire, Mongol rule in China flourished. They had a strong agriculture economy, and paper money stimulated commerce. Trade was encouraged with an open policy adopted by the rulers. Science, astronomy, mathematics, and literature likewise improved. After a successful period, the Yuan dynasty began to decline. Conflicts among the ruling class, natural disasters, and rebellious people caused the dynasty to fall in 1368.
Ming. Surviving from 1368 to 1644, starting the Ming Dynasty was a strong, difficult effort. It had to recover from the turmoil of the end of the Yuan Dynasty and the plague. Also, to repair damage from the Mongols, the state acted by planting billions of trees, restoring millions of acres of land to cultivation, and rebuilt canal and irrigation systems. These efforts succeeded and caused the economy to rebound, trade to flourish, and the population grew. A big influence on the dynasty was the Emperor Yongle. He sponsored an encyclopedia of 11,000 volumes to be made and had the most impressive maritime expeditions the world has ever seen. Yongle also built the Forbidden City, which was an imperial residence, and the Temple of Heaven, where rulers performed rituals. Yongle ruled with a court of eunuchs as advisors, and once Yongle died, these advisors took charge and made changes, such as ending the maritime voyages. With the eunuchs running the court for their own profit, they were overrun in a fight for power. Rebellion also ensued, and there was a threat of invasion from the Manchus in the north. Under these circumstances, the Ming Dynasty ended in 1644.
Qing! Also known as the Manchu Dynasty, this dynasty ruled from 1644 to 1912. It was ruled by foreign nomads from north of the Great Wall. The rulers wished to remain separate from Chinese, so they forbade intermarriage. However, elites did master the Chinese language and Confucian teachings and used Confucius teachings to rule the empire. This dynasty was somewhat successful, but practically ensured its own downfall. As a defense precaution, this empire expanded to Central Eurasia. The ruling nomads decided to use local nobles to govern regions. With such a large empire came a large population. Resources of the Qing dynasty declined and the population couldn't be sustained. With a mix of rebellion, loss of central power, and European military pressure, the dynasty fell in 1912.
Mao Zedong. This dynasty was all about one man, Mao Zedong. Mao was a communist, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, he was an effective leader. He supporters and peasants and led his party against the Chinese National Party and the Japanese for the power in China. After defeating both of these groups, the CCP was acknowledged and praised by millions of people. The communism that then ruled the dynasty did good in the beginning. It benefited peasants, encouraged nationalism, and expressed radical social change. Mao insisted land reforms and gave everyone equal rights, even peasants and women. However, as the time went on, Mao felt that his Communist Party had become corrupt. To restrict threats to his power, Mao launched a revolution on his own party. This cultural revolution did more than harm than good, though. It caused conflict and violence in China, and Mao was forced to recall and end it. After Mao's death in 1976, his once thriving empire was a disarray. Communism was extracted from China, and the last Chinese dynasty collapsed.